Mr. Twinkles, it is time once again to throw aside caution and go into the darkest recesses of the darkest, most evil, most corrupt place in the world. No, I'm talking about the comment section on YouTube! Let's see what else people said. And let's see what JS has to say, because JS had something that I thought was good last time. JS says, Genesis must be true because the rest of the Bible may not be true if it isn't. Hold on. Genesis must be true because the rest of the Bible may not be true if it isn't. Who can point out the fallacy? Well, JS, the fallacy is in your question because you didn't understand my point. Okay. Let's scrub back up to the top here. Why the debate matters. Okay. The point I make when saying why the debate matters is not, oh, this is going to hurt to even try to repeat. Genesis must be true because of the rest of the Bible may not be true if Genesis isn't true. That's not the point I'm making. The point is, if you say Genesis is false, that it means something totally different than what it says, and then in other parts of the Bible, it says, no, Genesis there means what it says, well, then you have a logical fallacy in your worldview. That you're saying, well, when God says to Moses, I made the heavens and the earth in 6 days, he doesn't mean it. Well, now you have to do something with that. Your worldview has God intentionally saying something to Moses which is false, and now you got to do something with that. What I'm saying is that if Genesis isn't true, then you have problems with the way you have to interpret all of those places that agree with Genesis in terms of the creation and the flood accounts. The old earth, the sort of billions of years evolutionary positions, those are the ones that are in trouble. So that's not a logical fallacy. That's just an honest assessment of the worldview as a whole. What I'm saying is that if you interpret Genesis the way it's written, in the most reasonable, straightforward way, it says on the first day, and you go, okay, that was the first day. On the second day, that was the second day. So that's Genesis 1, and then in Exodus 20, God says, hey, in 6 days I made the heavens and the earth, and then rested for a day for 7 days. God pointing to Genesis and going, remember where it says there were 6 days of creation and a day of rest? Those were 6 days of creation and a day of rest. And this is where God introduces the Sabbath and goes, so you're going to work for 6 days and take a day off. So if that's true, and God points to it and says that's true, then my worldview goes, okay, this was accurate. God points at that and says it was accurate. That's consistency. But if you say, well, this is wrong, well, then when God points at it and says, actually, that's true, then your worldview is arguing with God. So now you have a problem in your worldview. So it's not a logical fallacy. It's pointing out the accurate literary assessment that if you start off by rejecting Genesis, you wind up with problems in your worldview and your theology later on. So JS, you were just confused by the argument there. I hope that cleared it up a little bit. And then what I try to do with the evidence, as this was your question before, why do I put up videos about the evidence? Because scientific evidence points to Genesis as being accurate and trustworthy. That when we look at biology, when we look at astronomy, when we look at geology, we can see that all the observable evidence defends the biblical account of creation and the flood. So there you go. All I'm trying to say is that my worldview seems to be the one that's logical and defensible, and I want to share it with you. Well, I hope that was helpful to everybody. What do you think, Mr. Twinkles? Was that fun? Maybe sometime again we'll go diving into the dark, scary recesses of the YouTube comment section. In the meantime, I want you to remember something. Jesus loves you.